Okay, well, we
Can you
got,
get
a-
back
we,
in?
we got a lot going on
Well, I
here.
have to let you back in.
So let's see if we can get right into the agenda. Oh, there's Marcy. Hi there. Let's see. First thing is the newsletters. I had sort of expected that the March newsletter would be out by now, but it's not. Should be within a day or two anyway. And there's a nice article written by Nancy about the statue on Westlake Road on the old Bigham property. It sort of ties in with last month's newsletter piece, which was about the Our Lady of Lebanon Chapel, where the statue used to be. For next month, Preston Pierce has written an article about the peanut line. And so that's taken care of. And beyond that, we're open to suggestions. So if anybody has any thoughts or wants to volunteer a newsletter subject, let me know. Or if anything comes up in the course of our discussion about other things that you think might make a good subject for newsletter, we'll
It's not the
keep in
camera,
mind.
it's the audio. Well, the audio.
I wondered about
we're not hearing
possibility
that.
of, instead of writing an actual article, but maybe possibly doing an interview with someone.
On the other one.
Oh, that's an interesting
Oh,
idea.
yeah, it's on the iPad, right?
Yeah.
Just have to think of with whom. But I'm sorry, I don't usually have a dog in the house, but I do right now, so. Her bark is worse than her bite. So maybe if we could come up with a person to interview, that might be a little variation on an article.
Yes, you're right. Well, let's kick that over to Jared, since he's our oral history expert. Maybe Jared's got a student who would like to interview somebody.
Oh, that's a really good idea.
Well, yeah, I just got my batch of seniors not too long ago, and I did pick up one. I did pick up one who she got COVID, so she had to come over and join my class. From P History, a student asked her if she has any people, any ideas or any people that she'd like to interview. That might be a great option. So let me put that out there to some of it'd have to be the seniors, just because of I have more flexibility with that group because there's not as much of a state curriculum to follow. There is, but there's more flexibility. So let me reach out with them and see if they have any ideas, or send them some ideas of people that they could choose from.
I was thinking of possibly Dennis Brewer, because he knows so much about parks and the history of all of them, and he might be an interesting person. And plus, he's a former teacher, relates well to kids.
Yeah, he would.
That's a possibility.
Idea. Okay.
All right, that sounds good. Next thing on the agenda is our walking and driving tour of Westlake Road. We've been kicking this idea around for a while, and I circulated a draft outline of it, including a little bit about each site. It identifies 18 different sites along Westlake Road and has one, or in most cases, at least 2 images to go with it. So yesterday, we had a Zoom meeting. Several of us were on it, Richard and Donna and Lois and me. And there were 3 other people who are potential partners in this thing, all from over at FLCC Way, or in the case of 2 of them, they're actually staff people for FLTV, which is located at FLCC, but it's a separate entity. It's Finger Lakes Public Access Television. Kyle Krenzer and Forrest Vreeland is one of the staff people. Kyle is kind of the head guy there. So I had asked Kyle if he would be interested in getting involved in this project and helping us go from the stage where it is now, which is just an outline and images, over to a finished product, which would be something that we could deliver through the internet to people so that they could watch it either sitting in front of their computer at home, or they could watch it while they're actually on Westlake Road moving along in one way or another, either walking or riding a bike or in a car. Hopefully they wouldn't be trying to do it and drive at the same time, but as a
Right.
passenger in the car anyway. So they, and in addition to those two, there's another fellow who's on the faculty at FLCC by the name of Bob Potter, and he's in the music department, and he expressed an interest in working on the audio portion of it with us, recording a voiceover for it, which is something that the kind of prototype I was attracted to on this project is a walking tour of Naples, which is essentially a slideshow that has a voiceover, and the text for the voiceover is also at the bottom of each slide. So I think I've circulated a link to this to other people in the past. But anyway, so these three people gave us a pretty good idea of some of the technical procedures that would need to happen to go from the stage where we are to a finished product. And they also suggested a number of ways that we could sort of jazz it up, using live video, for instance, using music, using more than just the limited number of images that I had picked out so far. And there also is a certain amount of cost associated at least for the Finger Lakes TV people. When they do a community project like this, they have to allocate their staff time to some budget source or other. So Kyle is going to give me a proposal for what, his concept of how the thing would work and how much money he'd be looking for them to get involved in it. Don't have that yet, so we'll kind of defer it until the next meeting, and hopefully sometime before then we'll get together again on Zoom, and anybody who'd like to is welcome to sit in. And but for those who were there, what was your thought about the ideas that these folks were presenting? Lois, Donna, Richard, those are.
Yeah, I thought they were pretty good. It's going to entail an awful lot of work on their part, though, putting together basically a storyboard and the scripting the whole thing. It'll be interesting to see what they come back with as far as costs are concerned.
But if we can have someone from our group or someone we know be a narrator, that would cut down on costs. I thought it was very interesting, and they seem to be very excited about it, especially Kyle, figuring that they can use it themselves. They're looking at it more as a documentary. And
Right.
at least he and Forrest seem to be excited about it.
Well, it'll be a promotional piece for them too.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's right. And he also suggested that we consider doing it in partnership with the city. Of course, only a little bit of Westlake Road is in the city, just the far north end. But they have a relationship with the city in which some of the franchise fees that are, come out of I don't know how they work. It's basically Spectrum money goes to the city, and then it flows through the city and goes to FLTV to provide public access TV. The town, on the other hand, doesn't have that relationship with them. So they haven't done projects with the town, but they do projects with the city quite a lot. And that franchise fee is what ends up paying for their staff time. So if we could somehow rope the city into it, maybe that would help with the offsetting the cost to some extent. And he also talked about underwriters. Maybe there are other, let's say the cost is $1,000, or let's hope it's not multi-$1,000, but if there's maybe there's an entity out there someplace that would like to make a donation in exchange for having their name on the product as a sponsor or a donor or something like that. So possibility.
And Kyle suggested jazzing it up a bit by, in the background, having some period music in certain spots. Bob Potter mentioned about royalty-free music, period music, trying to obtain some of that. And but one of the examples that Bob used, or that Kyle used, was horses trotting down a road, but just subtle in the background, just to give it a little more pizzazz and interest to the people that are going to listen to it and go on the tour.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
I
I was
thought that
thinking,
you said that there's some students that might be able to do the music too.
Mhm.
right.
Yeah, and that would be something very good for their
Portfolio.
portfolio. Yes.
So he said one of the first things we should do is to try to identify people who are potential narrators, or not necessarily just one. I mean, it could be more than one, could be male or female. It's having somebody that's got a good sort of polished voice, and also is a familiar voice to the community is maybe good too. I mean, he mentioned Preston Pierce as a person who a lot of people know his voice because he does public programs. But then he thought maybe having somebody younger might be good. So, just think about it. If anybody comes to mind that you think would be a good voice for this thing.
Dave Medding is somebody I always think of. He was an English teacher in the middle school, has a great voice. And I think he has done some voiceover type of work. And I would be happy to contact him if and when that's, the time comes. It's only 18 spots and there's not a lot of narration unless more is added to it. But a man and a woman on and off would be good too, or younger people as well.
Yep.
But
I did send them all the link to the Westlake Legacy DVD clips, because and Bob mentioned having worked with Grey Wolf
right,
early in his career.
He
So there's music in that, there are a lot of images in that. I mean, a lot of that information was the basis for the outline that I did.
right.
So anyway, and then the other thing that they talked about that came as a surprise to me was the idea of asking the people whose properties are being featured if they could go inside and take some pictures of the interiors of these buildings. And my initial reaction was, I was a little nervous that we don't want to invade people's privacy, and we certainly don't want to encourage people on the tour to feel free to barge in or go knock on the door. I mean, that would be a real nuisance to the property owners. But on the other hand, some of the properties are open to the public, or at least publicly owned, for instance, or are businesses, for instance, like the Cobblestone Cottage, which is now a bed and breakfast, or the Butler Road Schoolhouse, which is town owned, or the water plant, which is city owned, or Ononda Park.
The yacht club.
Yeah, go ahead.
The yacht club also.
And the yacht club is another one. Yeah. So in those cases, they might be happy to have a camera crew come in and take some pictures of something interesting inside, and that might expand the thing from, I think the Naples one that we're using as a prototype, the typical length of a segment is somewhere between 30 seconds and a minute. It might average 40 seconds or something like that. They're really quite concise. And with additional video and additional photos and music and so on, we might be expanding those so that we get up to maybe a minute and a half per site. But I don't see anything wrong with that, as long as it's all interesting stuff. And
I like the idea of using the inside of the public places. But I do know that when OCHS, and we did I think it was in 2011, we did the house tour on Westlake Road. We thought when we went back, we would try and do it again. People did not, and even then was very hard to get people that, for security reasons, did not want people going through their home. And I don't know if people would object to pictures, but if you could get from those homeowners pictures of what the house may have looked like years ago, that might be kind of neat too.
You mean interior?
Interior pictures from years ago.
Yeah.
And he wasn't suggesting necessarily doing a tour of the home, but
No,
more
not a tour. No, I'm not talking
spotlighting,
that.
spotlighting different things like maybe unusual woodwork or something in
Okay.
the fireplace or.
Yeah,
something
that
along-
would be fine. I
Yeah.
don't think anyone would object to that. Yeah,
something
but like
along
a,
that line.
you know, here's where we keep our valuables.
Yeah.
The firewood box.
Well, and interestingly too, he did say that four of the places on the list, and he didn't say which ones they were, but 4 of them are customers of his because he's an electrician. So
Oh,
he said he
perfect,
already knows 4 of the families
perfect.
on our list.
Yeah,
So
great.
he didn't.
Sarah Linda? Sarah
Yeah.
Linda?
Yes, hi.
I had this question yesterday that I wanted to ask you. I know there's only a few that truly are private homes that were on that list, but of the ones that there are, did we ask permission to have them on this?
No, we haven't done anything along those lines yet. I do think it would be a good idea to, let them know about the project and that we'd like to use their house. And if they have an objection, I think we should honor that.
Yeah, because like you said, I mean, if people are all of a sudden going to be coming around looking at their property, I assume that somebody was going to ask them, but I just want to make sure. But
Yeah, but nothing along those lines has happened yet, because this is all pretty conceptual so far.
Right.
Lois, you also made the point about including Squaw Island and the name change, which is one of the next things on our agenda. But you have a good point that if this product does get made, it presumably will be out there on the internet and available for people to see for who knows how long, but years. And if the name change goes through, then this is not going to be accurate anymore. So I mean, it's not impossible to change something like this. And I think we should sort of keep that in mind as if once we get into the technical side of it, make provisions for ability to revise it.
And that was the other question I had. And obviously none of us know how long this process could take to get the name changed if it does. But so for all I know, potentially it could be changed before we even get this video done. But I did wonder if, depending on how they did it, because it sounds like they had given sort of a couple of different ways of doing it. If whatever they decided, if there was some ways that was easier to edit or change it down the road than others, or would it be easy on all of them? I don't know, but just something to think about.
Yeah, that's a good question.
For anything to be updated, I guess.
One of the things that came to mind for me was, well, I'm happy to see how enthusiastic they are and that they want to apply what they call high production values to this. So it would be quite a professional looking program when they get done with it. On the other hand, I was sort of hoping that it would be a simple enough process that having gone through this once, we would have the ability to make some more of these things on our own, rather than having to go to professionals to kind of walk us through it every time. Because we talked about this as maybe the first one in a series that could include other topics about local history. So with this, it sounded like it was getting pretty rapidly beyond our ability to do it as just sort of interested volunteers. I did talk to one other person who also worked at FLCC independently, and her suggestion, and this is a much more low-tech approach, would be to make the thing into a PowerPoint presentation. And she said it's possible to attach a little piece of audio to every slide in a PowerPoint presentation. So you can have your slide with whatever images you want on there and whatever text you want on there. And you can also record a sentence or two and have that be part of the slide. And then you go to the next slide and it's got its own, a speech that goes with it. Might be a little tough with music, but that's the sort of thing that if we could learn how to do that, might be a lot easier for us to extend it onto other projects without having to go outside and look for funding and so on for every single project. So I'm kind of curious if anybody has ever tried that. Ray, I know you've done PowerPoint things before. Have you ever tried the video or the audio part? Oops, did we lose Ray? I don't see him. Well, maybe he'll be back.
I think Ray jumped off.
Okay.
I can tell you, Sarah Linda, that I have, and it's not complicated.
How does it end up looking?
Well, you have the ability to actually determine the length of the transition from slide to slide. So, and you can actually the music can bleed, or the whatever audio you're using can bleed over from one to the other. It's not complex. The other thing, just to throw it out there, there are a couple of companies that actually build apps that you can download to your phone that are specifically for walking and driving tours. I
Oh,
started
well,
to work on.
that sounds like the one that we actually developed one using one of those apps called Pocket Sites for a little walking tour of Cheshire.
Yeah,
Which,
those are great because it goes at your pace. You know, at the pace
right.
of
Yeah, it didn't seem all that user friendly, and one of the drawbacks of it was it turned out Cheshire is kind of a dead zone as far as internet goes. So actually doing it on your phone in Cheshire turns out to not work.
I can speak to that personally. Yeah.
But that's just an oddity of Cheshire. But I did find there were a lot of nice things about it. There was a map, and you could click on the map and attach, your pictures to that little spot on the map. And then if it works the way it should, once you physically are at that spot, the audio would just come right on to your phone.
Right. It's GPS. It has a GPS cue.
Right. So that's
Your
something,
location. Yeah.
maybe the more high-tech adept of us might be able to work with one of those apps. And it was free. That was the other nice thing about it.
Depending on
Yeah.
your computer system, there's enough editing software suites that you can get, literally you can edit full-blown high-def video that would be as slick as anything you could want if you decide to spend the money on a suite for editing. But then there are also enough free editing or very low cost editing suites that you can get to do all kinds of video. My wife actually, I was the film and video guy, but she's actually become very adept at it herself. She does it for school. She's an educator, and she's probably editing video, it seems like every other week, sometimes maybe even more frequently than that. You can actually accomplish a lot. And if you keep it simple, if you don't want 5 different audio tracks, so that you've got, I think it was Donna that mentioned the clip clop of the horses, which is a great thing. And then you have another audio track that might be, some great fiddle music that you like that goes with it. If you keep it to 1 or 2 tracks plus your narrator, you can usually do that for next to nothing. I won't say nothing, but usually very, very low cost.
Yeah, that's that. Well, that sounds like a great resource.
Produce things, I guess is what I'm saying. That shouldn't be a big deal. And I'd be more than willing down the line to help out with that if that's something that you think the group wants to continue with.
Okay, good. Well, we'll talk about this more next month when we have an idea of cost from these guys at FLTV. And meanwhile, Benny, keep on the lookout for a good voice and make some suggestions. So, okay, next thing, we've talked about the interpretive panels at Ononda Park. A couple new things have happened. Nancy got prices from Mobile Graphics for those 3 panels. The one in the center is slightly larger than the other 2, but the total cost of those would be $440. So, and that wouldn't necessarily all have to come out of our budget because Sarah spoke with the recreation, I think there's a Parks and Recreation Committee, and they were interested in taking responsibility for one of the three panels. And Edith Davey, who is a member of the Environmental Conservation Board, said she would like to work on one that had to do with natural history. And maybe that one could also have a map of the, well, actually, maybe the map could go with the recreation one. I don't know, one of the three should have a map in it. And then the third one, which would be mainly information from our group, would be about the history of the park.
Mhm.
So my point on the money is maybe the Parks and Recreation department has a section of the budget where some of that could come from. So at the same time, or from the same place, I got a price also for the town, the historic maps of the town that we were planning to put up in Town Hall, and then we kind of got derailed last year since our budget was suspended, and also people weren't visiting Town Hall. But the price they came back with for 24 by 36, 6 different maps that we could put in the hall down level is $38 each. So that's under $250 for the whole thing. So we could actually do both of these projects with the amount of money that we have in the budget. We've got
Right.
$200 to work with.
Sarah Linda, the maps for on the maps is $38 each. Does that include mounting too? And laminating, or how are they going to do that?
They're going to print them directly on some material called Sintra.
Yep.
You know
Okay,
that
good.
stuff. Do you think that's a reasonable
That's
product?
fine, yeah.
Yeah.
Wilma uses that at for her exhibits inside.
Yeah. I mean, it's more expensive for the outdoor panels at Ononda because those have to be
Right,
weather
they're
resistant.
outdoor,
Even though they're
right.
on the roof, they're still, out in the open.
Okay,
But-
well, Centra's, it's a white material. It's an expanded PVC, basically. So they can, they print on that. And that, how thick is they printing on, 1/8 inch?
I'm not sure. I
Okay,
think it might be more like 1/4 inch.
okay.
I'd have to ask them.
So would we then be putting them into frames in order to
No,
have-
I told them we would want something that had a finished edge so that we don't have to frame them.
Okay,
It would be comparable to Gator board. And that does also include a little label panel for each one, 5 by 8 inches, so that we could put the date and the source of the map on there.
okay. So the question is, how do we mount them? Because Centra's a very smooth material.
Yeah, I asked that. Her suggestion was to use, what did she call it? A 3M product called, it's basically a sticky back Velcro, and then, you Velcro to the wall and you Velcro to the back of the board. and
Kind of
stick
like
it
where we
together.
did the
and it's something-
information panels before. Okay.
Right, and it doesn't pull the paint off when you take it off. That's, so,
That
that's.
sounds like a good price.
Yeah. So that's, I think what we should do is wait until next month when we have a better idea about the costs for this video project, and then make a decision about how we want to allocate our budget for this year. And then I think we need to run it by Doug Finch and make sure he doesn't mind, and, then we'll be able to spend some money. So, well, now we got new business. And the Squaw Island issue is the second one. But before that, let me just bring you up to speed on the Preserve New York grant. Again, April 12th is the due date for this. And Sarah Reynolds has been working with our consultant from last time around, Bureau Architecture, and Katie Como. She is able to do it, and she's going to give the town a revised proposal to do it more or less on the same schedule that we did the first phase. That is, we get the award presumably around August, September. She starts work then. She would try to get out into the field during the fall after the leaves are down so that she can see well and get pictures, and then put the, sort of work on it over the course of the winter, aiming to be complete by late spring of 2022. So, and then there would be a public presentation of the report results sometime in the summer. You know, we did it last time in August, I think. So there was an interesting subject that came up. She said, since the time she first did the proposal on this, she has been rethinking the method and the criteria to some extent, because there's been a little bit of a shift in the world of surveying, and this is a direction that comes down from the State Historic Preservation Office. In the past, a lot of times, these surveys were done and they referred to them as windshield surveys. It was basically drive around and make a decision on buildings on the basis of the way they looked, and looking for buildings that were very much intact, representing either their original appearance, or it might not be original, but the appearance that was at the time when that building had some importance in the history of the town. More recently, there's been a lot of talk about the drawbacks of that method. And one of the main drawbacks is it's all visual and it doesn't take into account sites that might be important because of other things, because of, for instance, people who lived there or people who were associated with that site, but that's not apparent just from looking at it. And another thing is sites might be important, even though the buildings that would come out from the old style of survey are primarily either residences or institutional buildings that represent, let's call it, the upper crust of the community, the people who had the most money and therefore built the fanciest houses or fanciest buildings, you know, churches, granges, whatever, and not necessarily the typical, the vernacular cottages or the vernacular farmhouses that would be representative of maybe more of the population, even though it was not the people with the most money to spend on buildings. One thing she suggested was that it would be a good thing to have some public outreach at the start of this project, and she would like to have the history team involved in that. So when we have our sort of kickoff meeting for the project, which would likely be in September, she'd like to have the history team involved in, just so that there's a wider range of people who she can call on to kind of point out what might be important sites that are not immediately obvious just to a person educated in architectural styles driving around. I mean, one example might be the chapel at Our Lady of Lebanon. That's a property that you could easily miss if you didn't happen to know that that was a chapel. But people who are familiar with local history do know it's a chapel. And the first time around, Katie spent a lot of time driving around with Ray, and Ray is probably the individual who's got the most depth of local history. So that was all very helpful. Wilma Townsend at the Historical Society is another person who's, you know, really good. And Nancy's another one for that matter. She's been interested in local history for decades here. So anyway, we were hoping the local history team would kind of take on the job of trying to help Katie zero in on some of the properties that might not immediately be apparent, but do have local significance anyway. Long-term residents of Cheshire would be another group that or long-term residents of Centerfield, for that matter, the other little almost hamlet in the town. And another thing we might do around that time would be to do a newsletter article or appeal telling the public that we're now engaged in phase 2 of this project, and we'd like people to speak up if they know of important historical either people or events that might have happened in a part of the town that, you know, they might know about, but we don't. So that could be maybe we could have an information session, kind of the sort that we had in Cheshire a couple of years ago, and just ask people to come in, and if they have photographs, wonderful, or if they just have stories, that's okay too, and we'll listen to them and write them down and pass that all along into the survey. So that's it for now on the survey, and I guess we have one more meeting before the deadline, and we'll update you as that goes on. So Squaw Island. I think you all got a copy of the email that came from Doug Finch asking the town, asking the history team for our views about the proposed name change to Skino Island. And a couple of people responded by email. The town board's position on this is, I think they're very carefully avoiding stating their position. So far, what they have done is to say, we're very much in favor of getting reactions from as many people as possible. And that includes us. So they have said, yes, they passed a resolution saying, we think that the naming entity should consider the opinions of Preston Pierce, the county historian, Ray Henry, the former town historian, the local history team, the city council. There's a whole laundry list of people.
Yeah, so Sarah Linda, if I can speak to that real quick, if I'm okay, I'm in the car now going to get my son, so hopefully you guys can hear me okay. We did, because the state reserves the right to rename, so yeah, that's exactly what we did. We said, basically, if the state sees fit to go ahead and do this, then we had to give them the approval to do it, as long as they take into account all the circumstances of the area and all the respected individuals and organizations within the area. So that's where we are right now. We can suggest, but ultimately the state will choose. Hopefully it'll choose something that is suggested.
Okay, well, the Skino Island suggestion, as you know, came from Peter Jemison of the Seneca Nation. I don't know that there are other candidates for a new name. I think some support for the idea of not changing it, but leaving it Squaw Island has been made. Any other, and I know Gil has some thoughts about a different idea. Do you want to speak to that, Gil?
Well, I think I have some personal sentiments that a new name should be descriptive of something about the island, if it's to change. I like the idea of a Native American name, though.
Yeah, I like that idea too.
The designation that DEC had given it, according to the material you sent, Sarah Linda, of Squaw Island Unique Area, tends to encompass many of the concepts I feel would be appropriate. And that's already apparently on maps somewhere.
I think the unique area is one of the categories that the DEC has. It's not used just for Squaw Island. There are other things. For instance, Bear Hill is also called the Bear Hill Unique Area. So, they have their wildlife management areas. They have, various other categories, and unique area is one of them. I think what the Senecas would like to do is get the word squaw out of the name. So
I can appreciate that.
I'm curious if anybody has explored, some naming it for its purpose, its intended purpose in the 18th century, like refuge or retreat. I mean, since it was a fallback, position, it would sort of be explanatory of what its purpose was, so that the uninformed visitor or the young person, would be easy to inform them of what its intent was. I mean, and calling it Squaw Island is, I mean, sure, it's a tradition, but it is, besides the fact that the word is, derogatory, it's not descriptive of what its intended purpose was, which was as a defensible, retreat position.
Well, I agree with Gil that we should honor the choice from the Seneca Nation. I think it was originally theirs. We took it. I think we ought to let them be the ones to name it.
I think if there was a particular word, I've found Squaw Island to be a special place. I would assume that there is a Seneca word that communicates special place. So if I were to suggest a specific word, it would be the Seneca word for special place.
Well, I always thought Canandaigua was the word for special place.
That's the chosen spot.
I mean, it's the chosen spot. That's pretty similar to special place. But, that's, you've got a good thought there. I mean, you could pass that question along to Peter Jemison and see if he could, see if he or some other linguist who's familiar with the Seneca language might think of another word.
Sarah
Although,
Linda, can you hear
I
me?
don't see anything wrong. Well, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, didn't Peter Jemison say that the word the name that they had proposed means peace?
Yes.
What's wrong with that? And it's their choice.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what was just said.
Marcy said the rationale behind the Skino Island was that the name means peace in the Seneca language, and her feeling is that's an appropriate name. Why don't we? What's wrong with that?
Well, as I indicated in my communication with you, Sarah Linda, the fact that hunting takes place on the island means that for people in the vicinity of the island, it isn't very peaceful during hunting season. It's almost as though we're a farce.
Who's hunting on the island? Who's hunting on the island?
I'm not hearing.
Marcy was saying, who is hunting on the island?
Well, that's New York state law allows duck hunters to hunt on Canandaigua Lake waters, even up to, there's a specified number of feet from the shoreline. And that includes private property shoreline. And Gil's right, people hunt or duck hunt around Squaw Island. So they're operating within the law. It's all you're going to get for an answer from the DEC on that. And I'm not sure you would probably need an act of the legislature to change that, because it's environmental conservation code.
I agree with that because they duck hunt. They haven't this year, but in the past, right off of our dock, very,
Right.
very close to our house. And also right off of the Butler Road, or the Schoolhouse Beach. They're right there. So
And
you
it
could
could
go
be very
down
visible.
and make noise and, and try and get, but they get really upset if anybody's interfering with their rights. So I wouldn't want to go up against them, but you're totally right. They
think
they
so.
know.
That
How long
hunting
is the
When I
duck
think
hunting
like-
season?
I don't think it's terribly long. I looked it up once. It's right after Christmas, I know.
It
'Cause I
comes
figure
in
everybody got new
waves.
guns at Christmas and they were out trying them out or something, new equipment. But
I'm not a duck hunter, but duck season comes and it goes. It is regulated by federal law and not state law because they are migratory birds.
mhm.
So the federal government sets those seasons and the bag limits and all of that kind of stuff that go along with duck hunting, and it's complicated and it has been contentious for years, and understandably so for people that live along the dock, shooting the ducks that they feed.
One of the things that is not directly related to Squaw Island, but I think impacts the whole concept of the hunting
Yeah,
is that Atwater Meadows is a nature preserve. And with waterfowl in and around Atwater Meadows, which is across a very short span of water from Spore Island, you're going to have waterfowl there.
yeah. It's a good point, Gil.
That's a separate issue from naming the name of the island. Hunting and regulations they are what they are. And the fact that Peter Jemison is suggesting this word for the island, for peace. I don't think that it's necessarily, that this is a peaceful lake. It isn't a peaceful lake. There's, jet skis and boats and there's hunting. It's the ideal of peace between the Haudenosaunee and and us, basically. That's how I interpret it personally. If anyone can hear me, I'm not sure. If only
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you. Did he have any other, was that the only offering he had, or did he have other ideas as well? Choices?
I believe the Skino Island proposal is the only one that's been made, but there's a form that the city, or really any entity that's weighing in on this, is supposed to send back this form, and you have three choices. You can approve it, or you can recommend approval of the proposal, you can recommend denial of the proposal, or you can recommend an alternative. So if we had an alternative that we all agreed on, we could make that suggestion. I think I tend to agree with Marcy that the idea of naming it after the peace, which is, that's something that they talk about every year at the treaty commemoration. This has been a very long-standing peace between the Seneca Nation and the United States, and it's something worth naming an island after, in spite of the fact that some gunplay does happen there from at a short time of the year. So my inclination would be to recommend that we just go along with it.
I agree too, Sarah Linda. And back to Richard's point, I mean, I don't feel like we should necessarily be tearing apart, I guess, the idea that the Seneca came up with, because I know that they put a lot of thought into what they were going to recommend and did it in good faith. And like Richard said, it was their land to begin with. I mean, I don't know that we're really should be judging what they come up with, but I mean, I think it's a fine name.
I'm kind of curious, if the name does go through, what's the process for changing all the signs and all the publications and everything else? I mean, this is changing a geographic name it's got some expense associated with it. I'm wondering who pays that, but that's just curiosity.
When they put up the name, are they going to put it up for acceptance? How does that work? Do we have mail-in voting if the state asks for that? We run around and get signatures. How do we handle that to support or not support what they've chosen?
There won't be a ballot or anything for it. If the state chooses to rename it, then it'll be renamed. But
Okay.
there's no there or anything like that would happen for it.
So the final choice comes down to what the state wants to do and not the local citizenry.
Correct.
Oh, that sucks.
Okay, well,
To the local, and that's it. It's just the state.
I think we missed part of what you were trying to say, Jared. Your voice was kind of distorted.
Okay, let me walk out this way. I'm in that in-between time between my Wi-Fi and my cellular. Is this any better?
I can hear you.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
I can hear you.
okay, so there isn't a referendum. There won't be any sort of ballot or initiative for it. Basically, the state, once the request was made, the town submitted the authorization through resolution to the state supporting looking into the name change. Once the state makes that decision, then that's what happens. So there's no local return on that. Hopefully that all came out.
Yeah. got it.
And Jared, does the state then support the cost of changing signs and so on?
That's a great question. I think I know the answer I'm going to say, but my gut, but I don't know if that's right or wrong. I honestly don't know. I mean, all the landmarks, all the everything, I don't know. And I don't even know if we know at this time where that cost will come from on everything. Think of all of, it would start with maps and other things, but then it would turn into all the other historic markers. So that's a great unknown right now.
Well, I think it's safe to say if the name the new name is officially okayed, it's probably going to be at least 5 years before it even comes into common use in things like signs and maps, and maybe even 10 or 20 years before it comes into common use in terms of the way people think about it.
Right. It's not going to happen overnight. And I would be surprised if it didn't change. I would be surprised if it didn't change to what Peter Jemison is recommending. And then it's not going to be an overnight process. It would take, like you said, it would take years to come all the way through.
Jared?
Yeah.
Does the state handle the renaming with regards to the United States Geological Survey?
Yeah, that's why it has to have, that's the group that has to chime in on it.
Right. I mean, that's how
So
it'll get
they're-
changed to GPS and
Yeah.
and all of the topo maps.
Yeah, they're the ones that finally approve it because they have the say over all of that. So yeah.
Okay.
All right, would somebody like to make a motion that we, as to what we want to do with this?
I would, but I don't know what to say. I don't know what we're
Well, all right,
looking for to do.
I'll make the
To
motion.
support
Um,
Peter Jemison's suggestion, or
Wait a minute, let me look at the.
we endorse his suggestion?
I'm reading from the form that is to be filled out by a government entity, organization, or individual. So we would fill in Canandaigua Local History Team there. And then this is to notify the US Board on Geographic Names that the blank, that would be Canandaigua History Team, recommends that the US Board on Geographic Names, and then you check one, either approve the proposed name, number 2 would be reject the proposed name, or number 3 would be other. And then there are comments. The following factors contributed to this recommendation. Attach supporting documentation if appropriate. So that would be, if you want to suggest something else under other, you would put an explanation in there.
Well, I would recommend that we support the new name that the Seneca Nation has chosen.
Seconded.
Okay, good. That's the recommendation. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And
Any opposed? Okay, that's carried. So I'll fill out the form and send it back to Doug, and I'll also send it directly to the Board on Geographic Names, I think.
And just out of curiosity, does anyone know whether Peter Jemison checked with other people in the Seneca Nation, or was this just something he came up with on his own and is proposing this?
I don't know. But I would be surprised if he didn't. I suspect that it was a group decision by them. That's just-
Yeah, it's my understanding that they had some of their own meetings about it, and they were involved in the public hearing at the town hall when it was initially discussed. And so I'm confident it wasn't just coming from him.
Okay, I'm just curious.
All right, well, we could put that contentious issue to bed for now. The next to last thing on the agenda, it has to do with the statue on Westlake Road, the Christ the Redeemer statue, which is up on top of the hill on the Notre Dame Retreat House property. We put this on the agenda. I spoke with Nancy about it, and Nancy's most familiar with it because she's written this article for the newsletter about it. In the course of that, she spoke with one of the family members of the Bigham family that was responsible for donating the land to have the statue put there, and also for selling a portion of their farm to the Redemptorist Fathers for the retreat house. And the Bighams put a deed provision into their deed when they sold the land to the Redemptorists, that said that that statue should remain there and that the Redemptorists are responsible for maintaining it. And they have done that. There have been times when they've gotten a little lax on maintenance, and the interested people have come forward and said, gee, this statue is looking pretty shabby. Shouldn't we do something about it? And once in the 1990s, there was a campaign, and some people threw money together, and an effort was mounted to clean up the statue, repaint it, do repairs, do some landscaping around it, clean out the weeds, etc. Planted some new trees around it. And then the same thing happened more recently, maybe within the last 5 years, a smaller effort. Anyway, the Bigham family's descendants, who are still in the area, are kind of concerned. They're a little nervous that the Redemptorists are losing interest in the statue. And one of them has spoken with Nancy about it, and another one, a cousin of his, has spoken with me about it. And I told them, well, the town doesn't really have any formal role in this. It's between you guys and the Redemptorists. But if you want to make sure that it's on the radar screen anyway for the public entities that are interested in local history, you should, first of all, talk with the town historian, the new town historian, whoever that is going to be. And you should also make sure that OCHS is aware of it, because their historic preservation is among their their areas of interest. And so anyway, that all seemed like she was happy to hear that. And she was also happy to hear that there was going to be some publicity about it in the form of the newsletter article. So anyway, and Nancy and I spoke about this, and we thought another thing that we could do possibly would be to host a meeting between the owners, the Redemptorists, and the Bigham family members who are interested in this, and also the town and OCHS, just to get everybody into one room and kind of get everyone talking together, you know, get everybody on the same page about what is needed, what maintenance activities ought to be happening on a regular happens. We don't want to get everybody into an adversarial position here. I mean, we don't want to really alienate the Redemptorists by, well, let me just say, you know, we need to do it diplomatically. And I'm not even sure we want to get involved with this at all, but I thought, well, let's put this in front of the history team and see whether you think it's a good idea for us to kind of jump into this role of maybe trying to help what is in fact, I mean, I would say that the statue there is a historic object. It's not a historic property exactly, but it's a historic object that's on public view there, and that it's, you know, it's an important thing to the people of the neighborhood and to the people of the town overall. It's got a beautiful view of the lake. So anyway, Nancy, you have anything more to add?
Well, I think that Larry Driscoll, who's the grandson of the Bighams, is concerned as he's getting older, and as I guess it's his cousin, you know, as they get old, I think there's only a few of them left, that what will happen to it when they can no longer oversee or you know, take an active interest in its care if the Redemptorists are not going to do it. And there's nothing to say that they won't. This is just based on past practice. So they were kind of seeking out something about landmark status. And I have no idea whether it was a town landmark. Do we have landmarks? Do we maintain? I really didn't know. That's why I brought it to Sarah Linda and said, what do you think we can offer these folks? Some different paths in which they could pursue.
Yeah, I mean, one easy thing we could do is to make sure that there is a mention of it in the, assuming that we do our grant and it's successful, that there is a mention of it in our historic resources survey.
Oh, good idea.
Yeah, but that's, you know, that's just in a book. I mean, that's not giving any individual responsibility actually for keeping an eye on this thing and making sure that it doesn't just sort of erode away.
Right.
And also knows what the future of the Redemptorist retreat house there might be. I mean, you know, looking ahead 20 or 30 years, are they still going to be there? If they're not, I think a piece of property like that with fabulous views of the lake might be a very attractive development site, future development site. And we don't want the statue to get lost in the shuffle there. Possibly it's already moved once, maybe it should move again if that were to happen. So these are just all things that, you know, would be interesting subjects of discussion were we to wish to wade into this whole area, which I'm not saying I necessarily think that's a good idea, but just thought I'd bring it up and see how the rest of you feel about it.
Well, I know I'm just a visitor here, but can I say, I think it's awesome. I was not aware of this, and I think just my opinion, listening to you and Nancy, Sarah, is that it's just as you said, it's town history, and the fact that the history team is going to be the liaison, just to see if there is another step that needs to be taken and where that goes, and to protect it for the future is. I wish Bloomfield had been as proactive with a couple of things that they were working on and kind of drop the ball on. I think this is exactly what our residents want. And it's just my 2 cents. I know I'm new to the group and all of that, but I gotta say I think it's terrific.
Okay.
I think before we commit ourselves, we ought to know what we're, long-term, what we're going to be committing ourselves to. Because this could become a, pink elephant in the long term. I mean, you commit ourselves to it and nobody's there to take care of it, we're still obligated. So we should really think this thing through.
Well, from that perspective, maybe the first step ought to be to run this by Doug Finch. Because it may be that his advice is to say, I don't think the town wants to get in the middle of this. Why don't you just leave this between the owner and the Bigham family?
Yeah.
So that's not to say we can't, put it in our survey. I mean, that would, that certainly, that's independent. But.
Well, as a liaison, committing yourself to anything anyhow, other than to explore all the opportunities.
I agree with you, Leaf. And when Sarah Linda and I were talking, she had several really good ideas for different paths in which they might pursue. None of them really, I don't think Sarah Linda really even involved the town directly, but I forgot exactly what you came up with, but they were really good. And I mean, people of Westlake Road, at least, are people who pass that road, on that road all the time, like that statue. And I wish it was lit. I think it would be nice if it were lit.
Well, Sarah Linda, as a historic preservationist, is there any designation, like a building can be on the historic register or national register? Is there anything along that line that would help to preserve it so that nothing happens to it in the future?
There are the national and the state registers of historic places. They typically will involve property rather than an object. And a property cannot be listed if the owner objects. So the town or, anybody, OCHS, anybody could nominate the statue and try to make the case. I mean, it's a complicated nomination process. And I've never been involved with one that just involved an object rather than a piece of land. I think it would have to involve the relevant piece of land also. The whole piece of land that has the statue on it would have to be listed. And if the Redemptorists said they didn't want it listed, it would not go any farther. Other than that, I can't think of any protections that would be appropriate for the town to try to do this. I think the whole thing only makes sense as a sort of just an effort between neighbors and between interested parties, all going into it in a very friendly manner and, sitting down with the Bighams grandchildren and the Redemptorists and everybody kind of agreeing the statue is important to all of us and we all want to see it maintained. The Redemptorists, I gathered from the Bighams that the Redemptorists kind of plead poverty and say, well, gee, we don't have much of an endowment here. We can barely put the money together to keep the field mowed, let alone repaint the statue or that sort of thing. And, they're probably right there. So, and the Catholic Church is not exactly, in good long-term shape in terms of holding on to expensive property that they might otherwise, there might be some pressure there for them to generate cash. So
maybe the Ash family would like to have it back on their property.
Oh yeah.
Take it back to the chapel.
Well,
how many Redemptorists are at the retreat center? Did they live there?
I don't know what they are currently. Oh, we could find out certainly,
And
but
also the age. that might have something to do with it. If you have limited numbers, limited money, and then an older priest population that's there, that could be one of the factors why they're not, down there with buckets of paint to paint the statue on a regular basis.
Right, I think that's,
I mean, I don't know. It sounds like, how long has the statue been there?
It was moved there probably in, I think about the mid-30s. Been there a long time.
yeah, for the first 20 years or so, it was there and it was on the Bigham's property. The Bigham's gave permission for it to be there. And then they eventually sold the property to the
Who owns it,
Redemptorists.
Linda?
I'm sorry.
Who did they give the permission to? The Bingham family?
To the, let's see.
It was part of the deed and the sale of the Bingham farm, 55 acres of the Bingham farm, which Mrs. Bingham, she had her own real estate company, and she sold it to them at a greatly reduced price, below market price, with this clause in the deed, two things. One, that they would maintain the statue. However, I don't think there was ever any, I have seen the actual document, did not see a list, an itemized list of what maintaining meant. So that's probably a problem right there. And then also that they create a bronze plaque that would memorialize her husband and her son. Mrs. Bingham was a devout Catholic, so that's what motivated her to do this. Back in, she's not on the date, the 30s, yeah. So, or no, she sold it in 65, I think it was 65, 66. But she had it moved to her property in the 30s when the chapel closed. So.
Okay, so they in a sense erected the statue on their property.
Yeah, the Bighams were responsible for moving it, I think.
Yeah, they moved it from the chapel down the road about a mile. They moved it from there, built a new platform for it, and placed it there in the 20s or 30s, I guess. Yeah.
Back in New Jersey, where we moved from, there was a church that was going out of business, so to speak, and they had a large statue of Christ, and they didn't know what to do with it, and so it was donated to the Catholic Church in our town with a provision that they had to create a nice presentation for it, which was done. So it's now taken care of by the Catholic Church there. Mm-hmm. It was a beautiful, beautiful statue, but it's undertaken by the Catholic Church there. I don't know if there's anything like that we could do with this one, if it could be given to or deeded to a Catholic church and have them have it out for public display on. Mm-hmm. Because that way it would make sense to have it where everybody could see it.
That's a really good suggestion. Very good suggestion.
I mean, I don't know if it has to be Westlake Road or if it can be moved to a church.
How big is it?
It's a little larger than life size. I haven't been up close to it, but that's how it was described in the 90s, in an article in the 90s. I mean, it's really old. There's no exact date for when it was made and put at the chapel. It's just very sad. I wish I'd known, but I think it was shortly after the chapel opened. So it's quite an old piece. And it's funny because when I was working on this article, I had a dream that I walked up to the statue and it was sitting down. And I thought, oh my God. What am I gonna do? I need to take another picture. But maybe we need a miracle to happen there. I don't know.
Can I suggest suggest, Nancy, are you a member of St. Mary's?
I was many years ago. I'm not an active member now, but
Yeah, I'm not active either, but I
Yeah.
think Deacon Claude Lester is still active. I
uh-huh.
know they added a new deacon, but Claude is so well dialed in, not just to St. Mary's, but to the whole diocese. I wonder if he could maybe just shed a little light on.
That's a good
possibilities.
idea. I'd be more than happy to make that contact. In fact, I did contact them in doing my research. They didn't have anything at all. So they said, please, when you get this research done, can you send it to us? And we'll put it on file for the future. So the Diocese of Rochester was really helpful in doing the chapel, not as much the statue, but they were very interested in St. Mary's when I was doing the chapel part because they had nothing on it. So yeah, so that would be a really good suggestion.
Well, these are some good ideas. And speaking of spreading the information around, in case people were not aware of it, the Daily Messenger did pick up our newsletter article from February, the one about Titchener's Point.
All right.
And it was in the Sunday paper. It didn't show up in their online articles, but it did show
No,
up
it didn't.
if you happen to be a subscriber. So that was nice. And when after the newsletter does come out this time, I will send the current article, the one about the statue. I'll send that to the Messenger, and who knows, maybe they'll run it on another Sunday when they're looking
Yeah,
for news or
right.
looking for Phil.
Right.
So that'll be good.
Good. So how do we leave this now? Because I will talk to Larry. Does the team want to at least have some sort of a meeting of suggestions, to make suggestions to them, not assuming that we are going to assume responsibility for it, but we can make some suggestions.
Let me talk to Doug to begin with.
Okay.
To see, because if he tells us he thinks it's a really bad idea for the town for us, even with our loose affiliation with the town, he, is afraid that it would just be a mistake for the town to get involved, then I think we ought to drop it, other than just as individuals. It certainly wouldn't do any harm to talk with Deacon Claude Lester, just to sort of see if that's an avenue for maybe putting these people together and ending up with a better quality of maintenance up there.
Okay.
So I'll just ask Doug what he thinks and let you know.
All right, then let me know and
We can go
in touch
from
with Larry.
there. And while we're on the subject of public publicity and so on, earlier today, Ray and Preston Pierce recorded their Titchener's Point history program. And it's now, I sent a link to everybody earlier this afternoon. It's now available on the town's YouTube channel. So if you click on that link, or if you go to the town's website, or I think you can probably Google Town of Canandaigua YouTube Titchener Point, and you will get a link to this program, which is about half an hour. Half of it is Preston talking about the general history of Titchener's Point, going all the way back to the Seneca people, and then the Titchener family, and then a little bit about the natural science camp, and then more about after the natural science camp, which was mostly the 1890s. Then the history of it during the early part of the 20th century, Foster Fruit Farm, and ultimately the Silver Springs development. And then the second half of it is Ray Henry talking about the natural science camp in more detail, with a lot of really interesting historic images, because one of the activities at that camp was photography. And so the family of the Professor Airy, who was the head of the camp, had saved a lot of images, and they do a wonderful job of kind of describing the era. So it's very entertaining, and I was glad to have it recorded, because Titchener's Point is so much in the news now over this proposal for the town to buy it and make it into a town park. So one possibility would be for us to to advertise or, you know, create an event at which this video would be shown. Possibly sometime in the next week, because Monday is an upcoming town board meeting at which there's going to be more information presented about the Titchener's Point park acquisition. I mean, they've already presented a ton of information, so I'm not sure what the new elements are, but I mean, we could encourage encourage the public all to watch it at one particular time, like let's say at lunchtime on Monday, so that people who are thinking about this and might want to go, you know, sign into the town meeting and so on, would have this background about Titchener's Point. Or the other simpler thing is, so we could just give some publicity, letting people know that this video is out there and that they, you know, offering the YouTube link through a poster or a mailing to the town's email list, or maybe a notice in the Daily Messenger or the Penny Saver or something like that, that will just alert people to the fact that this program is out there. So those of you who are good at public relations, you have any ideas about how you'd like to handle this?
I sent you a link to the Canandaigua Connected or Finger Lakes Connected. Did you happen to see that?
Oh,
Because that's a really good place, as I keep saying, to advertise. And the public notices and things like that. They might put it on there for free as a public notice.
yeah, I think I did try that link and I wasn't able to get on it, or I can't remember.
Okay. I'll see what I can do on that to get you something that you can get into.
All right, that would be great.
Is
And-
that the one that Dawn,
Yes,
Dawn is
yeah.
handling? Yeah, I'm not finding that quite as friendly as when Donna Bennett had
I
it.
agree. It's a whole different thing, but
Yes,
it's still there. So
Yeah.
I agree with you. It's a whole different feeling.
yes, yeah, and not as easy to follow with everything
No.
that he has towards the end of it. It's, yeah, a little more challenging.
Yeah,
Let's put
I
it that
agree
way.
with you. I agree with you.
There's another social media site that has something to do with Cheshire in the name. It says, oh, things I love about Cheshire or something like
Oh,
that.
there's one about things I love about Canandaigua, things I love about Rochester. I think they're all over. So yeah, that could be a nice spot. It's a Facebook thing.
Yeah, these are Facebook.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, I'll suggest to Sarah Reynolds that she write up a press release to go to I mean, she's the person who I think usually makes the contacts with the social media outlets, and that she put something about that on. And if you can look into Canandaigua Connection, that would be great. Any other ideas?
Does the town have an electronic message board?
I don't know. I don't know what-
No,
Well, you know, where they have the
No.
the little lights that tell you what's going on, and
mhm.
like when you sometimes go in. No, did you say that, Jared?
Yeah, no, there isn't one.
Oh,
As
that
far
might
as
be
the-
something they should look into.
Yeah.
You put it at the dump on the weekend on Wednesdays, and you know, people will see what's going on. And
Well, there is the
change
one
it all the
there,
time.
yeah, there's the one there reminding people to get their stickers or when it's closed, but I don't know how many people actually ever look at that one. But
yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just one more way to get things out.
yeah, to get stuff out there, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, any other new business? All right, well, this has been a full meeting. Thank you all, and we will, next meeting is, you like this afternoon time?
I did.
Yep, all right, good. So next time will be the first Wednesday of April, 4:30.
All right. Thank you.
Okay,
Have a
Bye-bye.
good day.
have a good evening.
Goodbye.
All right,
now.
take care, everybody. Bye.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye.
Bye-bye.